South Africa has pre-existing conditions that are challenging for children: high levels of unemployment, high levels of poverty, high levels of violence against children. And what COVID-19 has done is amplified all of this. And so we can be guaranteed in this country of long-term toxic stress in many of our children going forward. At Save the Children, we've been speaking to children throughout this pandemic in our networks and elsewhere, some of the most vulnerable children in the country. And what we hear from them is that they are worried about their future, they are hungry, and they miss their friends. We did a rapid assessment towards the beginning of the pandemic last year, so it's not broadly representative, a relatively small sample of about 500 children and caregivers. But what we found there was that 85% of the respondents reported feeling mostly sad throughout the week, and 21% of them required mental health and psychosocial support. So what we're seeing emerging now is a picture that is greatly troubling and should be for all of us in South Africa. Because we had already such a problem with violence against children in this society, we're seeing children reliving trauma. So I would say from the COVID-19 and the restrictions that have been in place for all of us as parents, it's a little too early to know for sure whether PTSD is going to really become a major issue, but the signs are all there that there will be lasting implications from this pandemic for the mental health and well-being of our children.
The most important thing for us to know up front is that not all children have been affected in the same way. And even in one country, like South Africa itself, there have been vastly different experiences of children. So there are some children who have been at the coalface of it, who have lost parents, who have lost uncles and aunties and grandparents, and significant losses in terms of financial and home securities. And there are other children who have been seemingly unaffected by it completely. And then there are children whose caregivers are frontline workers. And so every day poses a new unanticipated risk for those parents. So I think that we have to look at it as a spectrum, that not all children are affected the same way. And even when we look at it like that, technology and the online schooling like we're talking about. So, a lot of children now have to resort to homeschooling. If we just maybe start with that, again, it's not the same, because some children who really struggled with school before have really thrived in this environment of being able to school online in the safety of their home, away from bullies, without the pressure of going to school. And other children have been disproportionately left behind. So how are we seeing children react? The answer is differently. So we get a lot more requests for children with anxiety to be seen. We haven't seen the bulk of it yet. We're not sure whether they're going to have anxiety, school refusal, whether they're going to have difficulties concentrating. Are they going to be more distractible at school because they're preoccupied with the worry? We're not sure, and we're waiting to see. And similarly for COVID, given the lockdown and the really prolonged restrictions, children have lost a lot of things. Loss of schooling, loss of peer interaction, loss of significant caregivers who died. But the thing I want to highlight is children have also lost their sense of normalcy. So, children are supposed to engage with them. So children are supposed to explore and play in the environment, and they actually can't do that. Lots of activity centers are closed down. There are no group gatherings. There's no fun parties. There's no play dates. When they're in school, they have to keep this really artificial separation of 1.5 meters, whatever it is. Obviously, it's a risk, it's a benefit that we have to think about. But the largest scale impact on children is not yet being seen. And I think that we are going to struggle when we realize that collectively, children are not doing well. They don't know who's going to die next. They're not sure if their teacher will be there when they go back. They're not sure if they can go back to school. What happens? Somebody asked us, what happens if my mom can't buy the tablet and if the data doesn't get cheaper? I mean, it's practical things like that, right? Data is unaffordable in South Africa. It's ridiculous. If you look at other low and middle income countries like India and Brazil, data is free. Why are we asking people to pay exorbitant amounts of money for data? Children who need to be educated, who already are disadvantaged, are unable to do that. So their worries and their fears are very concrete, very practical. Can my mother afford to buy me a tablet? If somebody donates it to me, how will I afford the data? Will I be able to finish my school? Children are not worried about solving the world's problems. They're worried about things that affect them now. Children are not talking about, I'm going to have PTSD, I need to wash my hands 10 times, will I get affected? No. It's about everyday reality, which is that they're not okay, their parents are not okay, and we're not doing enough to support them.
It's a really complex topic in the sense that, if you talk about the impact on children, you have to look at different age groups. The 8 to 10 cohort is different from maybe the 12 to 14. So it's very difficult to analyze even the data as to what is the impact on young people. But what from all the discussions in our webinars, there's almost an agreement that if you look at the child, you look at the family, you look at the community, including the school and so on. So children, irrespective of the age cohort, in vulnerable communities, they become what we call children at risk, if I may use a technical knowledge, a technical term, children at risk. In other words, they are children who are likely to suffer on a long-term basis because the family, the community, the school didn't have a capacity to manage the after effects. You have to pay extra attention to how young people understand developments, like in terms of conflict, pandemic, as we started with the COVID-19 pandemic. But above everything, I think we have lessons from all over the world that the school in particular should be assisted. Bodies like UNICEF, committed journalists on child protection, development and well-being, they really have to work hard to have packages easily available for teachers. Because if you're a teacher, you don't really understand all these issues. You don't understand. Children are back, you think they are at school, all what you need to do, you look at your syllabus, you have to push it. And so we have to find the language, the words to articulate what they've gone through, because they will say, I'm fine, I'm okay, typical of a child. So we have to have scenarios, children must be free to talk about whatever they have gone through, whatever the fears they might have had. Child-friendly ways of talking about these things.